Hello. Hi, Bonnie. Okay, the article that I have sent you is called Social Competence and Psychological Vulnerability as Predictors of Facebook Addiction. And as you can see, it's printed in a journal called Studia Psychologica. Who knows? Okay, I've never heard of it before, so don't be surprised if you haven't. There's many journals out there that we do not know of. But what you first do with a hard article like this is you will look at the title and the abstract, and the abstract gives you a little clue of what this is about. It says, this study examined the predictive roles of social competence and psychological vulnerability in Facebook addiction. The study was carried out with 248 Turkish university students. Participants completed the Turkish version of the Bergen Facebook Addiction Scale, the Psychological Vulnerability Scale, and the Perceived Social Competence Scale. So I guess these are, three different kinds of measures for things, and that Facebook addiction thing might be worthwhile. Now, you didn't mention any kind of Facebook addiction, but I think your research question has to do with, does use of social media affect the social skills of adolescents and teenagers? Does that have negative effects? I think he wanted to know. And Facebook addiction is obviously the more extreme version of a negative effect, but that's one reason I thought that this might be useful. I think I had plugged in social networking and adolescents or teenagers to find this. And so it says, the research data were analyzed by correlation and multiple regression analysis. Facebook addiction was in a positive correlation with psychological vulnerability and in a negative correlation with social competence. So this gives me a clue that maybe this might be helpful. What's more, the findings indicated that psychological vulnerability and social competence were significant predictors of Facebook addiction. So that sounds like it might be contributing to negative effects. The contributions and limitations of the results were discussed. And so it's about a 9-page article, I believe. And the thing you do is you'll look at the title and an abstract, and then the next thing you do in an article like this, it's a very difficult one to read, is you actually look at the end of it. And the end of it, you'll notice that a lot of these kinds of hard articles that are research articles are in what's called an IMRAD format, IMRAD, and that stands for Introduction, Methods and Materials, Results, and Discussion. And if you remember from your son's science classes and your own science classes, whenever you do any little experiment, you have to put down this little scientific approach, and so that's why these research articles are done in this way. And so the discussion is the interpretation of what happened, and that's the important thing that you want to know, so that's where you look first. And that's usually without very much of the hard information. Like, I don't know about you, but I have trouble reading statistics. They have all these symbols and p-values, and it's a nightmare. But if it's your first semester of college, it's not what you want to read. But you don't actually have to know anything about it. You can just read this discussion section. So if you read that section, it'll tell you, it's not a very long one, and the first 3-4 paragraphs of it are really useful, I think, for your maybe this would be a good one to do for the annotated bibliography, because essentially what you do is sum up the discussion and talk about the basics. Just basically say it's the main things in the abstract, and then that part of the discussion will not have to say anything about how they use the statistics or anything. But you can just describe it like I have here. And it does talk about the limitations, which I think is something that you would already think about. But what then you do is, when you read a hard article, like I said, read the title and the abstract together. Obviously, the title gives you a clue, and the abstract gives you a little bit more fleshed out idea. And then you read the discussion, the end, not the complete end, you know. But then you go back and what's helpful is if you read the introduction section. The introduction section will give you, in most cases, what's often referred to as a literature review. And in a way, it's really helpful for you because it gives you an understanding of what the background research might be, you know. And so there's a little section on social competence and psychological vulnerability and explanations of those things. And in fact, these writers, I guess it's two writers, Mamet and Bakhtiar, are the two authors. Well, that's a tough one, huh? Anyway, or maybe it's three. Well, I'll have to figure that out too. I'll help you with that. Anyway, so basically, when you see where it talks about psychological vulnerability, if you'll read that section, it says, you know, to understand the nature of vulnerability, its social context should be studied. And then you'll notice there's a reference, a day, 2001, and that's using the APA stuff. And maybe that's what you should use for this. APA is probably a reasonable choice if you're writing about social networking sites. It's has to do with sociology, psychology, and that's American Psychological Association. So I think that suits your topic pretty well. So why don't you just from here on out choose to do it in APA style for everything. Okay, you need to learn MLA too, but you don't have to do it for the paper or the annotated bibliography. But anyway, if you look back at the references, you'll notice that they follow the discussion at the end. And sometimes there's a separate section in research articles called conclusion, and that's important to read too. It usually talks about next steps or something. But if you'll notice, a day is a book, and you should probably see if the library can get you that. Maybe At Risk in America, maybe they have that. Jossie Bass is a very good publisher, and it's within the last 14 years at least, so that's reasonable. And that way you don't get Turkish results. You might get something that's a little bit more relevant to American teenagers, which is possibly probably what you were writing about. So, so what you do is you read the abstract, then the discussion, and then you read the introduction, or what's sometimes called strictly the literature review. And then you can read the methods, and then you can scan the results and from the statistics, and whatever your sense you can make out of it too. Then, but it doesn't matter if you don't understand the technical details. Okay, and then you look at the references because they can help you. And so that's kind of a weird way you jump around when you read these things. And I can send you a few more that I found that are actually easier to read than this. But so if this is something that you think you can summarize probably in 2 or 3 sentences, I think it's doable. And you can say this might be helpful because X, Y, and Z, and you can say, well, they seem to have fairly good credibility. They have published in this journal. They've used statistics, and they are affiliated with the Turkish Aeronautical Association, and that's all I know about these people, obviously. But they did it on university students, but they seem to be fairly sound researchers from the looks of the fact that they published in this scholarly article. So, and they have references and so forth. They basically cover their butts on their own credibility, regardless of how famous they really are. So basically, that's how you read one of those tough articles. And once you read one of those tough articles, if you can tackle this, you can tackle anything, right? And so, if you look at Academic Search Complete, I think that will really help you. Soch Index is a good one too, or EBSCOhost influences a lot. But make sure you do those searches if, the way I described in the email. That's probably a good start. Does that sound good? I hope. Anyway, hope you have a good day. Bye.